Welcome to another episode of Question of the Week. I do apologise as this week is kind of different. Kind of lent my camera out, so I'm having to do it off a webcam rather than the standard way of doing it. However, it is what it is. It doesn't really change much in the ground context of it. So this week we are doing the Question of the Week on what do you think UK tournament organisers can do better / need to improve on. This is kind of a follow-up from what we've done previously in terms of what UK organisations need to do and what they can do better and improve on. So I thought it would only be right to kind of apply the same logic to tournament organisers, and there'll probably be a players one at some point as well fairly soon. So we'll kind of go straight into it. I mean, I'll add my own thoughts on certain things towards the end, but I'll go through people's responses. When I do my own thoughts, I'll probably kind of put within that some of the things that people have said to me, like on Steam and whatnot as well. But yeah, going through Twitter as a whole, so one of the first comments that we got back was from Astro, so the CX player himself. So just in terms of adding UK gaming tours, so for those that don't know, UK gaming tours is was, however you want to necessarily say at the moment, a UK tournament with a 10 grand prize pool that started in around January time. It was run by Ben Bagg, the guy that obviously used to run Kaz as well, or UK Esports, sorry. But yeah, the whole tournament's near enough been an absolute disaster from the outset, even when obviously they copied UK Masters rules, and even after that got pointed out, it wasn't exactly changed at any point as well. Then furthermore from that, whether it be obviously the way that the invites were done, certain people weren't too happy with. I mean, I will actually attest to one thing, that obviously there were certain scenarios that didn't help them out, and I'm not saying that that's like an excuse for anything, but there was certain things that wasn't exactly ideal for them, in terms of say like UFrag roster dropping out, in terms of Rasta team dropping out as well. But the logic I will kind of apply to that is, near enough if it was any other tournament, the team, even if they dropped, they would have still in some way participated in it, to at least keep those fixtures upheld and whatnot. But by that point, the reputation that kind of UKGT were setting themselves wasn't exactly going down too well. But obviously from that, then obviously it's led on to various things. So obviously the kind of the quality of the stream productions and that wasn't very good at all. But obviously the casters done as well as they could, given the setups that they had. And then moving past that, obviously the kind of issue that we're with now with UKGT is in terms of the finals, of which we were meant to happen ages and ages ago, and it keeps on getting delayed. And then the last public tweet that got put out from UKGT was saying that they should have some more information that week. This was a good freaking 2 months ago, near enough now probably. But yeah, the whole thing's a shambles. I do remember someone did say to them, in terms of the best option for them now would be just to pay out and then focus on Season 2. However, I think that there is a problem with that, in terms of they can do that, they can pay out, they can focus on Season 2, but I think as it stands, the reputation that they have for themselves now, if they were to do a Season 2, isn't going to attract any of the teams that they would kind of want to, necessarily. Like, I think a lot of the higher end teams are definitely not going to prioritise UKGT ahead of other tournaments, so that rules them out. And then you've got certain other like teams and whatnot that might not even want to participate just because of the shit show that it's kind of been in the first season. Following that, obviously, even if they were to then say like carry on with the offline finals, the risk that they do have is that if those offline finals are then really poorly executed as well, then that's not going to help things. Plus, being honest, I really don't think that they're going to have the viewership there anyway to kind of remotely justify doing it. I think the only people that genuinely really care about the outcome of UKGT at the moment are the teams that participated in it, that are essentially due money. Other than that, I really don't see many people taking in too much interest in the whole tournament at this point. But either way, hopefully we do get some clarification on to what happens with that sooner rather than later. But yeah, I mean, the whole thing was probably, let's follow the ways best not to run a tournament, but hey ho, it is what it is. So Dekkytsh replied, organisers actually organising before they go live, tournaments without casters, GOTV IPs are so hard to find, which GOTV is the right matches. Yes, I mean, in terms of tournaments going like without casters, yeah, I mean, it's not something that I overly see that regularly. The only time that you might see it nowadays, more often than not, is just if it's a very large scale tournament and there's no way that you can kind of host or set enough up to kind of cover a lot of the matches that are being played. That might potentially be a thing. I mean, other than that, like tournaments that you're seeing that don't necessarily have casters, then they're not very well run tournaments, let's be honest. Now and again you will bump into certain issues from a production side that kind of prevents that from happening, I will also add. But the GOTV IPs one is actually something that I wanted to speak about, and I had to kind of do my own asking around in fairness as well, just to kind of get clarification on it as to how that process works and why it is so difficult to kind of make available to the public when they need it. So you have to remember that, bear in mind, if it's coming to like open events like an Epic LAN when you've got around 30 teams, to an Insomnia when you've got like up to 80 odd teams, right? Like the manpower and resources it actually takes to manage that alone, in terms of having all those GOTV IPs, having those GOTV IPs that are actually specific as well, to the point of saying whose matches whose, rather than obviously just random IPs and people trying to figure it out, hopefully. It is a lot of hassle to also maintain that. So firstly manpower, but obviously with manpower is more expenses more often than not, so that's going to be a problem in order to try and get it. And literally it is a pain in order to try and set up for the processes that you have to go through it. So I do feel like people should genuinely like respect that a bit more. That being said, it is something that I genuinely do want to see going forward. So as each tournament kind of continues to grow, then hopefully we will see kind of better management of the public GOTV IPs that are made available, because I do think that that will be helpful from a public outside perspective of those that can necessarily go to the event, and even more so for people trying to cover it as well, and people trying to produce content around it. By having those GOTVs available, it does make it a lot more accessible. So yeah, fully agree that the actual issue itself is something that I would like to get addressed, but it's a lot easier said than done in order to get that and maintain it to a good standard. I think I'm pretty sure from that anyway, with regards to the tournaments without casters, that was being specifically applied to UKMinors maybe. Dekkytsh did also follow it up with charging teams, UKMinors charging teams £30 to not even have rcon to their own servers. Epic and Iseries, you're just thrown a list of 20 GOTV IPs. So the GOTV IP things I've just addressed, it's far easier said than done. So again, hopefully in the future that will start becoming a more of a commonplace, where it is held to a good standard of what that information is made available. And then past that, then obviously in terms of the UKMinors charging 30 teams £30, like at the end of the day, if those teams are willing to pay it for when it might not necessarily be worthwhile, that it's kind of on you as teams. That being said, I mean, UKMinors from the outset has not really been something that I've been overly following, just due to the way that they kind of came out about themselves on the initial front, and various people I know that have kind of been in and around that whole tournament have not necessarily said the most positive things in the world. That being said, the kind of the base of what they're trying to do is a good thing. I haven't spoken to them directly to really say one way or the other in terms of like what their plans are going forward and things like that, but that kind of scene below the kind of, so that amateur scene does deserve something like that to kind of keep it in the competitive mindset by having those sort of tournaments. I just think that certain ways that they're approaching things are definitely not the best way of doing it. But at the end of the day, running tournaments is a learning curve for everyone that currently does it. For every tournament that they then carry on to do, you would always expect that they're going to make it superior to what the previous season or whatnot was. On to Afro. So Afro, obviously the legend behind Radix Esports. Exposure in general, HLTV have already said that they'll put events on if they're notified. More on-site coverage too, similar to Epic interviews. HLTV have strict standards regarding what events and tournaments they'll feature on site, was the response from John Kelly, who obviously works for Beeline by Game and helps out and obviously runs UK Masters. Afro then followed it up saying, obviously he'd basically seen a tweet from certain guys at HLTV saying that if they were informed of the events that they would put it on there. Now what John responded in terms of it, like once you speak to those people, it's easier said than done. When I was helping out for last Epic LAN, was it, or the one before that, we had the same process of being able to try and get the the epic games and whatnot on HLTV, and it's far easier said than done. In terms of it's not literally as simple as us just being like, okay, can you put that on there? Yeah, sure, why not? And then 2 minutes later it's on there. So I know, like, I genuinely have full confidence in every single tournament organiser besides maybe UKGT, that they definitely do try and get that done as much as possible. Like, there's no way that they don't. So as much as, yes, I do think it is a very important thing to have those games on HLTV, I do genuinely know that the people running these tournaments are genuinely trying as much as possible to get those games on HLTV. I do think that HLTV themselves are the ones causing that stumbling block as to why more often than not it doesn't happen. So we'll follow it up. Neggy's obviously bringing out one of the kind of better comments throughout the whole thing. So stop being so kind to those that break the rules, e.g. those that delay games for hours and break half the tournament structure. So yes, I could not agree with this any more highly. I do feel like that, I mean, I think it's slowly edging that way in a way as tournament admins become more and more pissed off with the way that things go. But it is very, very difficult to do, again, in terms of, say, like, especially on CS multiplayer, for prime example, if you've got 2 admins in comparison to the 80 teams, to actually manage that effectively and make sure that you deal out the same punishment for every single team is a fucking nightmare to do with 2 people, because if it's always he said versus she said more often than not in terms of what one team is saying, why that delay was caused, what reasons do count as legitimate reasons. And the problem is that if you're going to enforce a rule such as that, you need to make sure that you follow it up, because as soon as you put a rule like that in place and you can't follow it up and you can't execute it properly, then you get a ton more shit than what you did before you even had that rule in place. So I do, like, 100%, I know that the tournament organisers in the UK do want to do something about this as much as possible, but it's just finding the best way to do it, because it's all well and good and saying, oh, okay, for every time that a match is delayed for more than 10 minutes in between a half or things like that, then that team gets, like, docked a map or whatever, however you necessarily want to pull it. But at the same point, when it comes down to it and you ask, okay, why is that game delayed, and that team says, oh, well, they're not connecting to the server, the other team says, oh, we've got problems connecting to the server, how do you definitively identify that they're having that problems or who's in the right? So especially, again, when you've got, like, 2 admins that are trying to do 4,000 other things and they've got 400 people in their ear holes 24/7, like, it's just such a difficult thing to actually do and do properly. So yes, I think everyone is there for that kind of rule set being put into play, especially when, again, like, UK teams take the absolute piss, and as much as people want to moan about the kind of tournament structure and everything, like, a lot of the time it is self-inflicted by how long people take in games. Like, it's to the point where even in, like, a best of 3, right, like, it gets to half time in the first map and people take a 10-minute break at that half time, and then it'll get to the end of the first map and then they'll have between another 5.5 hour break, and then they'll do the same thing per map, and it's like 3 hours later one game's complete. I'm not saying that happens all the time, but it does happen. So yeah, I mean, I fully agree it is something that needs to be done, needs to be addressed. It's just trying to execute it in the correct way and making sure it's actually manageable in the way that they do it. Cookie, so IGI Cookie, GOTVs is literally any ESEA matches that we stream yet that we could do so much more if matches were available to spectate. So yes, I fully agree. Again, I did touch on it a little bit in terms of the kind of making it easier from a content side of view for you guys to kind of follow up from when those GOTV IPs are available. Again, it's such a difficult process, more so when it's offline, just because of the way that you actually have to deal with the IP addresses, and then for themselves finding out which IP address falls onto which game. It's just very, very time consuming. So if you only have the servers, like, information, like, or they're put online like an hour before a tournament starts or something along those lines, then the time that you've then got to manage that on the small amount of manpower that you have is very difficult. Yes, for those saying, obviously, oh, we'll just get more people, easier said than done. Again, it's at a cost. And yes, I know in response people might turn around and say, yes, we put enough money to the likes of Iseries already, but at the same point, you know, I mean, that's one that's always going to be debated in terms of profits and how it actually works from a finances standpoint. But yeah, look, I think everyone's aware that having GOTVs made more publicly, or GOTV IPs made more publicly available, is something that we definitely need to see more of. So hopefully, as tournaments continue to happen, that does get sorted out and addressed in the best way that they potentially can. We've got theylle, so stop letting teams take breaks when they want, run a good stream for your event, have a good qualifier. UK Masters does this well. The breaks bit we just addressed, so yes, completely agree. The stream side of things, certain tournaments do definitely, like for one reason or another, UK tournaments just seem to love having production issues considerably more than what everyone else does, and it's weird because I genuinely do have a lot of faith in a lot of people behind the production that actually do it for these tournaments. It's just one reason or another, sometimes it's a bit unlucky, whatever it necessarily is. But yeah, overall I think stream quality and the amount of games streamed, especially streamed at events especially, does need to be sorted. Again, easier said than done in the way the schedules work and delays in games and everything, and you don't want an inconsistent stream. So yes, again, it is something that definitely needs to be done. Have a good qualifier. UK Masters do this as well. So yeah, I mean, in terms of the qualifiers, I think for the most part the qualifiers have been better. I'd say go back like a year or so, and the way the qualifiers were done, I didn't agree with at all, and especially the way that some of them were handled. I think there was a specific ESL one where they changed the formats of the way it works in terms of not inviting the previous teams to kind of done well that would essentially then gain qualifications to the next one. It was the same because they had a UK ladder as well, of which teams that qualified through that were then supposed to qualify or be invited to it as well. And then it was like there was one qualifier left, I'm pretty sure, and then they just randomly decided to give those two teams from the ladder like a bunch of qualification points in that system that they had, even though one of those teams didn't even exist anymore. So I mean, it was a very retarded situation, of which we at the time and many other people did kind of send their disapproval towards said tournament organiser, and it wasn't handled in the best way as well. But at the same point, like I've said, everything's a learning curve. Like when it comes to UK tournaments, none of them are going to be perfect. They're all under their restrictions that they have. They're all on a budget. They all have, like, staff-wise especially is limited in comparison to what people are kind of looking at from pro tournaments and expecting from pro tournaments, and thinking the same thing should be replicated over here. Yes, in an ideal world it should be, but at the same point, again, far easier said than done, and a lot of these tournaments have a lot bigger budgets to operate on than what UK tournament organisers do have. Miami, so good stream doesn't mean 2K bitrate and a basic GOTV overlay with commentators paid in skins. Again, depends on what tournaments you're on about. For the most part, like, I wouldn't really apply that to any of the bigger UK tournaments, maybe towards the more amateur side of things. Then yes, but at the same point, amateur is what it is. You can only do so much with so little, essentially. So a lot of people prefer to still do something that might not be the best quality in comparison to not doing anything at all, so you've got to kind of weigh it up. NK, so we'd like to see tournaments with consistent rosters. I know this is hard to enforce, but it would help build the scene. Yes, again, great point, but how the fuck do you do it in a legitimate way? Like there are certain things, say like the way that UK Masters do it. So obviously the teams that were in the finals at the end of last season, they can only regain their invite and their spot to next season automatically if they still have 3/5 of the same roster. So rules like that are in place, which I do think are very, very helpful to kind of stop it to an extent. But at the same point, past that, how far can you really go, like to actually limit it? Because of the problem with trying to do it is the only way that actually works is if all tournament organisers agree on that same rule set as to kind of the eligibility of rosters in terms of stable rosters, and to kind of introduce that 3/5 rule across the board, you can only do it if all tournament organisers agree on it, because only if 1 in 3 agree to it, then it just creates a problem in terms of how people prioritise and how people do things, and it doesn't necessarily mean there's going to be a fix anyway by necessarily putting that rule in place. As much as I agree that a lot of like roster issues and roster splits that happen are down to a lot of petty issues or people's inabilities to actually take criticism and sort out problems, but overall, like, there's no clear-cut way of being able to say, yeah, like, this is the way that we can make sure that players, I mean, there's certain things they can do in terms of the way that the tournament works itself and when it is running, in terms of limiting the subs and limiting the amount of changes that you can make and things like that. I do think that they need to be addressed more specifically going forward, but past that, it's so difficult to kind of give a good answer and a good solution as to how you actually deal with that. We'll move on to Archer. So this is, I think, one of the kind of last comments that we've got. So taking general feedback and actually implementing it, e.g. qualifier slots are always for a few days before, make another round, even if it takes another day, plan that in advance so everyone has a chance rather than having to sign up days before. I'm going to agree and disagree. My throat is going today, Jesus. Yeah, I'm going to agree and disagree. So taking general feedback, yes, I mean all tournaments should do it. I know UK Masters do it after UK Masters itself, and they do it after Iseries, so I'll give props to them. Specifically, I haven't really seen much from ESL in terms of asking public for feedback. I mean, I know they obviously speak to their kind of people within their circle that they're in. You don't, not from what I've seen, this is anyway. But yeah, I do think that they should be taking more steps in terms of like the market research side of things and actually finding out what people want and getting more people's opinions. And I will give UK Masters specifically some credit for that in terms of that they are generally always open for people to actually suggest their opinions as well. But yeah, in regarding the qualifier slot side of it, being honest, you can't approach it like that. Like every single tournament you see for qualifiers has a limit of how many qualifiers are run and how many spots there are available. From their point of view, they're going to rather run like 3 qualifiers with 64 teams that actually gets filled out than say like 4 with 120, or say like with 128 teams that only have 70 odd teams. Like I know the point that you want to cater for everyone, but firstly, I'd say it's not to the point where it's affecting any teams that you'd expect to qualifier in the first place. It's only affecting those kind of towards the kind of lower sides of it, and I'm not saying that's right, but you do have to look at it from the point of view that you're saying, okay, well, like plan in advance, add another day so everyone gets catered for, blah blah blah. But like, obviously by doing that, it's more things to fit in other people's schedules. It's more money that's going to be like cost in order for staff in order to ensure that they can run it properly. All things like that you've got to kind of address as well. And again, I think it kind of defeats the purpose of it as well. Is that like that's the whole point? If you aren't able to sign up in that time period, then unfortunately that's on you. Like I said, for the fact that all the kind of important teams, and I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, but they manage to sign up on time every time without really having any hassle with it, would go to show that more often than not it's a working way of doing it. But yeah, I think that'll round out most of the points that we've got from that. I guess from my perspective, one of the things that I would definitely say is that I do feel like we need to be. I mean, look, I've been critical in the past of tournament organisers, but at the same point, I would also say that I have been positive as well. And the way I look at it is, a lot of people are very underappreciative of tournaments that we have in the UK, and underappreciative of realistically the resources that they do actually have at their disposal in order to actually make the tournament everything that people want it to be. It is a learning curve for all of them. I do think that people are very, very quick to jump on the gun when an issue arises. But look, at the end of the day, people are saying, especially when you're speaking about like feedback forms and everything like that, that's all well and good, but it requires you as the public and the stakeholders and whatnot that are invested in it to make sure that you're actually giving it constructive feedback, in terms of there's no point saying, oh look, like you shouldn't be doing it like this. That's all well and good, but if you don't agree with a way that things done, then you have to suggest a better way of doing it. Because until you have that answer, until you have that suggestion as to that's how it's going to be done better, then your point essentially doesn't mean jack shit to them, because there's no alternative. So people definitely need to be a lot more constructive when they are giving their feedback in regards to kind of issues that they might have with tournament organisers. I'd also like to add that kind of on top of this, again, for me, one of the big things, and it was mentioned once or twice within it in terms of what people said from the tweets, the content that they can do around it. I think it was Afro that mentioned it in terms of like the content, so Epic doing interviews and things like that. I know specifically, obviously, just from helping with Epic and Gumpster and whatnot, like the kind of plans that they are trying to enforce for content going forward is very, very good. So I'm incredibly hopeful that going forward that there will be a lot more kind of marketing presence around the event and around the teams and players of the event as well. I'd be more than happy if kind of ESL and multiplayer and whatnot start to kind of do this more. And like I've said previously, I know ESL have done it in the past where they've had kind of like player interviews pre the kind of matches and the kind of online match side of the matches as well. So I would kind of like to see things like that coming back, and just overall more market material for the organisations and whatnot as well, especially for events that are costly at the end of the day. Then kind of giving them that bit back and having that marketing presence and that value and the analytics that you can gain from it. It would be something that I'm pretty sure that everyone within the kind of scene that would be very much appreciated. But yeah, besides that, I think, like I said, I think everyone decides to compare pro tournaments and think the exact way they're run should be the same way that it's run in the UK on completely different levels and structures. So people do obviously need to take that in mind. But yeah, I mean, overall, I'd say, look, we're still a lot further ahead than a lot of other nations in terms of the quality of tournaments and the prize pool of the tournaments that we actually have. Of course, we want more. We want the scene to grow more. 100%, everyone's going to agree with that. But it's got to be a kind of collective effort, which is kind of the only reason why I'm saying, like, this week for tournament organisers, previously for organisations, just to try and get everyone to kind of give their feedback and give their opinions and see if anyone does actually take anything useful out of it. But some might not, but we will see. But obviously that's been the end of the question of the week for this week. By all means, obviously, if anyone's got any suggestions of questions they would like to see me do in future, by all means let me know. Other than that, remember to like, comment, subscribe, hate, whatever it is you feel like doing, and peace.